What's up, YouTube? Back with some more content on the TL today. I am doing, like I discussed in the last video, the 3x3 transmission fluid change. But for those of you who had the 2004, maybe even some of the 2005 models, I'm not sure about the other models, you're gonna appreciate this video, so keep watching. You're only gonna need a few tools to do this job, but there are a couple things I wanna talk about specific to the 2004, but I'll go over each individual item that we need to do here. So first thing you're gonna do is get the air box out of the way. That's really easy. You're just gonna remove the clamp that goes here, hose clamp that goes here. That's actually over on the air box itself. And then we're gonna start working here. So I know this is not controversial necessarily, but just some people have a different thought process when they come here. I'm going to replace the filter before I start adding the new fluid in. Now the thought process is that I want the fluid I put in to not run through the dirty filter, to run through the clean filter, so that the transmission itself is getting as much new clean transmission fluid as possible. Now, the thing on these older transmissions, or the 2004 models, right, is that if you see, this is where the normal fill plug is. But if you look at this item right here, this is a second gear squirter. Now, apparently there were some recalls and whatnot, and they introduced this second gear squirter. It's not a big deal. What you're gonna do is you're gonna pop, there's a bolt that goes right there. Let's see if I can get that to focus. You're gonna pop that bolt off, and then this whole thing, it just pulls off with this bracket right here. It pulls up out. Now, the first set of 3 quarts, I am going to fill into here just because I wanted to make sure that I was correct on this. And so I went and looked through all the information. I'm gonna fill here. Then what I'm gonna do is on the first drive, I am going to drive it to the parts store, and I'm gonna use, see if they have a small line, and use the fill plug to fill the other 3x3s out of there. So the first one, I am gonna use that, but when I replace that, and the reason I don't wanna keep pulling this out is because there's an O-ring. I don't know if you can see it right there. My fingertip there's an O-ring right on the bottom of that. There we go. On the bottom of that bracket, or I'm sorry, on the bottom of this jet, if you will, there's an O-ring. See it right there? Boom. There's an O-ring. I don't want to damage this O-ring. I don't have another one, so I'm gonna lube it up good. It's gonna fit back in there. I'm gonna replace this filter, put everything back together. So now, the things that you need here. This is a 12 millimeter on that bracket. You're gonna pull that off. This is a ground strap that goes right there. I always put the hardware back in where things go unless I want to remove them like these. So that's a 10 millimeter. Then there's a 10 millimeter there, right down at the very bottom, and right there. So when you're putting this cover back on, these lines line back up, so it's really easy. And then I have this full filter replacement kit. This spring goes inside that same orifice. You're going to replace that little piece right there. I've already put some transmission fluid on that. You're gonna put a new O-ring on this little cover I was just telling you about, and there's the little line for that. And then we're gonna drain. And I'm actually not using anything special. I'm using a full synthetic Valvoline import multi-vehicle automatic transmission fluid, so nothing crazy here. And these kits for these little bolts, this is the feed line into the oil filter, should come with 2 new crush washers. So one goes on the top of the housing between where that line that this goes through goes. So one goes on the bottom side of that, and then one goes on the top side of it. So it's gonna be underneath of this. Mine were stuck to the housing, and one is stuck to the line right now. If you see it, you can see how the washer's stuck to the top of the line. So you wanna make sure you get that off of there and replace that. The other thing is, remember these little housing bolts, especially if your car came from the Northeast. I live in Las Vegas, but this car came from the Northeast. These are gonna, some of them may be difficult to get off. When you're putting them back on, the torque spec is very, very low on them. As in my old age, I would much rather something leak from being a little looser than snap off a bolt in a housing, and now you have a much bigger problem. So do not smoke these down. Remember, these are just 10 millimeter bolts. I cannot stress that. So I am just finishing this up now. I did an oil change on this thing as well. I didn't want to record the step-by-step because there's so many videos of doing this step-by-step, but I knew that the early model '04 stuff with the second gear little jet there is important, because when I first got this stuff off, I didn't know about that, and I was like, oh shit, I don't see that fill port. You know what I mean? Luckily, I hadn't drained the transmission yet, but if some of you find yourself in a spot where you drain the transmission first, you get under the hood, and now all of a sudden you don't see a fill port, that can definitely be tricky. I went to the store, like I said, I was gonna try to do it through the trans plug. After pulling that little jet out, looking at the O-ring and then seeing how it just slides back in there fairly easily, there's probably not a lot of pressure on that O-ring. I did check for leaks both times, and it was fine. So if you want to fill it back through that O-ring, you can do that too. It was super easy. Transmission already shifts smoother. The 2 to 3 shift is already way smoother. About to put the last 3 quarts in right now. Take it for a drive. Hopefully this helps out. If you got any questions about this or anything in particular, drive it in the comments. Hope you all enjoy. Later.